Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, Beale.
What was that?
I don't know, it's an interesting way to pronounce it, Beale. I sound like a Bond villain.
A bit Polish, isn't it?
Yeah, a bit Polish. Oh, here we go. 10 seconds in, you've now offended the Polish community. I mean, oh, fucking hell. I mean, thank fuck Andy's not with us, obviously. You know, because he would be in uproar. Right.
Anyway, let's get to the juice of it. So, we are back with a Myths episode. Now, we've had a break from this series, so this might, you'll be like, Myths, what? I thought this was ended. I thought you lot did a Myths roundup. However, it's come to our attention in the last few weeks. It's always been around, but we just see more and more of it sort of crop about the whole thing about form, technique, and posture. Now, me and Tom, obviously, we're going to go into what we think. There's a clear perception of what other people think out there in the world. So we thought, right, this needs to get tackled ASAP. So we're going to come back with this. But before we get into it, we need to address one issue. So if you were with us last week, so not on the last Myths episode, because if you are just listening to the Myths series or you've just gone back and listened to this one particular episode, what I'm about to say will mean nothing to you, and you'll be like, what the fuck's this podcast about? I thought you were going to be talking about form. However, we're going to be talking about giant straws out in the ocean being switched from blow to suck. Now, let me give you some context. Last week we did our live podcast special to celebrate our 1 year anniversary, and one of our live audience members sort of confronted us on one of our conspiracies. Now, we had a conspiracy that the oil rigs that you see out in the sea are actually giant straws siphoning food down to monsters such as the Loch Ness Monster. And then we went on to a conspiracy about the Titanic being an insurance scam. And then the audience member, Ryan, said, was it actually the straws being switched from blow to suck causing the Titanic issue? Now, Tom, I think we've got a bit further into this now, didn't we?
No. The deep end.
Well,
literally.
In the sort of... I want to be evidence-based here. I'm not too sure that these oil rigs even existed at the time.
Oil rigs are real.
I'm not saying they're not real. I'm not comparing them.
Are you saying oil rigs aren't real? Have you ever seen an oil rig?
For fuck's sake. Oh, what have I started? What have I done?
I actually haven't seen one in person. Have you ever seen one in person?
No, because normally...
Have you seen an oil rig?
They're quite far out.
Have you seen an oil rig? Yes or no? Have you seen an oil
No,
rig?
I've not seen.
Have you seen an oil rig with your own eyes? Yes
No.
or no? I haven't either.
Right.
Just saying.
Before I go into the poll, which the results weren't very surprising, I'll actually go through some of the stuff I got from people as well. People actually got in touch. It was it's a very engaging poll. So the first one was, is this bad / will cause injury? So what I'll do is I'll quickly, for people who are watching on YouTube, if they're watching any of these clips, I'll show the picture. So I showed this picture. See, that's a...
Why you hold up your phone? We can do our new technology now.
If that doesn't record. It doesn't record the screen. So this is the picture I put up, and I basically said, is this bad / will cause injury? And a whopping 67% of people said yes, and then 33% of people said no. And then what I did was I pulled a bit of a funny, which I thought was going to trick people out, and it definitely did. So the next picture I showed was this. And this is a strong man picking up an Atlas stone. Now, I'd argue he is more bent over and more curved than the first one. So if you go by that logic, people who voted that the first one was bad should be voting for this one being bad as well. However, if I now go to my poll results, it was only 21% of people said that one was bad. So the first one was 67, the second was 21. So everyone said the Atlas stone lift was fine. It's not bad, it's not going to cause injury. And then the final one I did was I asked which posture will lead to more pain. Now, I got a couple of people messaging because they understood there was no right answer for this one. But a lot of people did obviously put an answer, and this is the picture I showed. So if that just focuses in, can you see that? It's all right, Tom?
I can't see fuck all there, mate.
There we go. Right.
So you should be using our new technology.
Yeah,
there you go.
Right. So you can see the one on the left the left is on the camera there is obviously upright straight, and the other one is curved over. So I asked which one do people think is going to lead to more pain, and obviously to no surprise, which I didn't expect this to be any different. And a whopping 81% of people said that the curved, the sort of leaning over posture was going to lead to more pain. So that was people's sort of perception. And I said I got loads of votes on these, got really good feedback. And I'll quickly just go off with a couple of messages I got sent in actually, because they're worth reading. So if I go to one guy, so this guy was, I had some really good discussion with people actually. And some people made some good points. I just want to stress, I think Tom was going to stress this anyways, that we're not saying that form and technique doesn't matter. We're not.
I'm going to keep repeating that throughout this whole episode.
We're not trying to say fuck your form. It doesn't matter. Lift however you want to lift. However,
Alexa, set a reminder for every 10 minutes.
My
See
question,
these different perceptions.
My question would be simply is like, why do people think this? And I love this quote. I always say it is that people hate what they don't understand. So because John Smith on YouTube, who's stacked as fuck like an absolute machine, and he says X, Y, Z, it must be true, and everyone else is stupid and wrong. And people like to surround themselves in these little echo chambers of people who come across as very authoritarian, very brute, very sort of bruntish, almost bullying in a way. Kind of that attitude is people like to have an alpha in their life. People like that. I don't want to say father figure because we're getting a bit fucking like psychological here, but people like that.
I do see myself as a father figure.
People like that dominance in their life. So if someone big and loud and strong has said, you must not do this, this is the right way, if you remember, people are like, yeah, I love that. And then because they're so ingrained in that person's personality that they ignore anyone else and they say, yeah, but this person said this person said that. So but what I'm saying is that I reckon people think like this because of what they've been told, and they like to say safe in their echo chamber, tunnel vision. And when you challenge these beliefs, it's a bit differently. So what I'm going to do now is, before we move on, I want to challenge people's perception a little bit. So I want you to forget good form and bad form, and I want you to think about it as load. So this is something we're going to say quite a lot in this podcast, is load. So the movements we perform will just apply load differently. That's what I'm getting at, okay? So if we perform any movement in a periodised fashion, regardless of form, our bodies will adapt, and our tissues are now basically going to be more resilient to that technique. So what I mean by that is if we are in a good periodised training program, regardless of our technique and form, our bodies will adapt and our tissues will become more resilient to however we've decided to move that load. The issue is going to come if we're not in a periodised training fashion. So if we just go in every day and we just lifting as heavy as we can, we're not thinking about a periodised training program, that's when the issue comes. And that's nothing to do with how you're lifting that barbell. So I want to bring something which is quite interesting. So me and Tom were looking at some papers by Tim Gabbett, and what's interesting is that where I work in a military gymnasium where I work, the guy who runs that gym, he was talking with the head physio about Tim Gabbett and his approach to acute and chronic loading. So now we were looking at it from the military perspective of why are soldiers getting injured, and we looked at acute loading and chronic loading. So if you're not aware of that, is acute loading is for example, if I was to go on holiday,
throw the weight on.
Yeah. So if I was to go on holiday for 2 weeks now, let's say 2-3 weeks on a holiday, did nothing at all, and then I come back and I then decide to do a 10-mile best effort followed by a 1RM deadlift, 1RM bench press, that is acute loading. Chronic loading is when we load ourselves over a longer period of time. So I would come back and go, actually, you know what? I'm going to start on this low thing, and then I'm going to chronically load myself over time. So this guy, Tim Gabbett, he mentions how undertraining could actually lead to a higher risk, injury risk, and that high chronic workload actually reduce injuries. So what he means is if you're undertraining, the issue with that is you're not giving your body enough time to adapt, and you're not allowing your tissues, like I said, to become more resilient. And that's why he was saying that undertraining could lead to higher injury, and that high chronic workload, so actually doing a lot more work but doing it over in a chronic pattern, is actually going to reduce injury because we're adaptive, we become more resilient. And basically the issue with most injuries, as we spoke about, basically comes down to acute loading. So regardless of good and bad form, we've said this before, if you do too much, too soon, you're at a higher risk of injury due to adaptations not taking place. Because you're not letting your body rest and recover.
Doing too much too soon.
Too much too soon. So
too much too
really,
soon.
As we go forward now, forget about good form, bad form. Think about good load and bad load. If you're doing... So this, obviously we're biased because me and Tom are both in the fitness industry, we're both trainers. So we're obviously going to be biased in that you need help from a trainer, because if you've not got help and you have no idea about periodised training programs or anything to do with programming, the odds are you could be doing too much too soon. You've got no idea about your own load management. You're just going into the gym and thinking, I'll do this today. Tomorrow I'll just do this, I'll just do that. Your body's never going to adapt. And then you'll injure yourself doing a deadlift. Someone will look at you and go, your back was a bit curved there. That's probably why you injured yourself. When really it was probably because you were doing your 1RM every single day. Not because you were lifting it that way. So as we go forward, think about that.
Quick reminder.
So, something I said there was, which led on when Tom was saying what people might think, and that is that the common one in the world of actual people who have got education in this field is that they reckon that it increases anterior shear forces on spinal discs, increasing the risk of injury. Now, there's a lot of data. The data that supports this statement, is actually normally done on dead humans and animal spines. So there's obviously one issue with that is that you can't assume these findings will carry over to living humans, because obviously it's very, very different.
Human bodies can adapt with chronic workload over time.
Absolutely. Obviously, if you give,
they're
dead, aren't they?
You know, for one, dead pig spines. So like we like to rattle off on Stu McGill a lot of the time. And this is actually one of the reasons why, is because a lot of this belief actually comes from these Stu McGill studies, one of which he actually had a dead pig spine, and he put them in this horrible contraption which it flexed and extended it back and forth, and I think it was like thousands and thousands of time. Like, one, that is an acute workload.
Yeah.
So you've just suddenly put the pig spine into this machine and done it. You've not given this pig spine progressive time to adapt, and, well, two, you can't fucking have it adapt because it's a dead pig spine.
Yeah, it's dead. Yeah, it's dead.
Whereas, humans can adapt. We can adapt to it. No, who knows?
What I just want to add here, if I haven't already, I don't think I've mentioned it yet. So, something I was having a discussion with another coach about was when, obviously, as Dean mentioned in the voice notes at the start, is it depends on their training age, depends where they are in how they normally lift. So, if for me, I like to say I lift quite well in my deadlift form. I normally do try and keep myself at that the stereotypical neutral spot. As I said, it probably isn't 100% neutral, but I try and keep myself in that position. And if I've got a guy I'm training with and I know he literally tends to lift like that, and then he suddenly then starts doing some lifts a bit heavier than normal, and then he starts to really stoop over, for me, I'm not going to be like, oh, you're going to hurt yourself. It's more of a red flag to me that maybe he's doing too much too soon. Because if his form starts to break down with that heavier weight, and I know he can lift with a good technique normally, then I'm like, oh, whoa, why have you lost technique all of a sudden? And then I realise, hang on, that's probably too much weight for you. We need to maybe build you up a bit more. But that's because his goal is to compete. So when you're competing, you want to lift the most efficient way possible. Yeah. But I'm not going to go, oh my God, you're going to hurt yourself, because that's not the case. I mean, he could probably be fine. But if we're doing just a simple 5x5 session, I might be like a red flag, like, okay, maybe we're doing a bit too much here, mate. We might want to...
It's like, during your chronic work, as we increase things chronically over time, you're able to stay in a similar position.
Yeah, you should be able to, yeah.
Yeah, but this one set here, we've upped the weight a bit, and this one set, you look completely different this time, which goes to show me that, okay, maybe we've increased the load too soon.
Yeah.
But you'll notice that we're not saying that, oh shit, he's going to hurt himself because it's dangerous because of the position he's in. But straight away, it's kind of like linked in the sense that we've said, okay, well, for him to not hold that position, it shows that maybe we've loaded him too much.
Yeah. So you mentioned this bit earlier, Tom, about manual handling. So this next bit, basically, I've wrote down here, manual handling training is pointless. So I'm going to back this up with some data here. So we've actually got a paper here from Daniel Sower. So... occupational interventions for the prevention of back pain. Overview of systematic reviews. So,
that's fuck all.
What about these jobs? So you've got jobs with lots of lifting and reports of back pain and off work, sick with a bad back. So this is an issue in work. The reason that manual handling training was brought in, because you'd have these sort of construction type jobs where people would be going off sick with bad backs. The companies have to pay them like, we can't afford to pay these people to be off sick. Why are they getting bad backs? We've already said pain's complicated. We'll probably do an episode on pain in the future. We'll try and get someone on like, what's his name? What's the guy's name? Adam Meekins. We'll probably try and get him on, so like if we can, if we're lucky and fortunate enough to get him on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to read this paper, because it's got some really important stuff on this. So this is, as I said, this is a different one, by the way. So this is risk factors for low back pain and sciatica, an umbrella review.
Sciatica. Sciatica.
Sciatica.
So we can edit it out, Bill.
I'll leave it in.
We can edit it out, Bill. You see, what you should say, I was just doing like a, villainous accent.
Poland's back.
Sciatica.
Don't bring the Germans back into this.
Poland's back, he never left. Oh, how's this sciatica? It's quite good, actually.
Very good.
I know how to resolve this.
It's the the credibility hat.
The credibility hat, exactly that. And just to add to the spirit of the show, that's actually what I hold it on. That is rigid. Well, as I've mentioned many times, I actually got this off of Wish, and I'm pretty sure it has extra vertebra. Never bothered to count them.
So this paper I'm going to read out now is from Patricia Piera et al. From 2018.
Patricia? It's probably Patricia. What the fuck is wrong with you? Patricia?
Right, let's have a hard reset. I've obviously lost the plot. I don't know what's going on with me today. I need to write a hard reset.
This is an acute load management.
Yeah, it's an acute load to the podcast. I blame it on the 3-hour drive I had this afternoon. That's what I'm going to blame on.
An acute load of driving.
That's what it was, mate. So, let's do this. A paper from 2018 by Patricia. And I'm not even going to say the surnames. I'm probably saying that wrong now in my track record. So, low back pain is a highly prevalent condition that is associated with significant disability and work absenteeism. So obviously, as we said, people going off work, it's obviously back pain is a massive thing. You always see people don't your benefits with back pain, and obviously back pain is one of those things. We said pain's complicated, and it's one of those ones where if you say you've got back pain, it's very hard to say that you're lying.
Yeah,
you can't, and that's an issue you get at work. So there's a variety of environmental and individual characteristics have been reported to increase the risk of lower back pain. To our knowledge, there's been no previous attempt to summarise the evidence from existing systematic reviews of risk factors for lower back pain or sciatica, which I said right this time.
I did, yeah.
So the study design, this is an umbrella review that was carried out. I'll just go bang down to the results there. So they included 15 systematic reviews containing 134 cohort studies. 4 systematic reviews were of high methodological quality and 11 were of moderate quality. So it's quite good there. Pretty deep. Yeah. They didn't include any shit ones. Of the 54 risk factors investigated, 38 risk factors were significantly associated with increased risk of lower back pain or sciatica in at least one systematic review, and the odds ratio ranged from 1.26. I mean, that doesn't mean anything if you're not really au fait with this sort of paper design. Mm-hmm. Adverse risk factors included characteristics of individual, so example older age, poor general health, example if they're a smoker, physical stress on spine, example vibration, so if you're in that construction site, obviously you've got increasing vibration, and psychological stress, example depression. These things obviously can have huge impacts on things like pain. The conclusion: poor general health, physical and psychological stress, and the characteristics of the person increase the risk for a future episode of lower back pain or sciatica. So really, what they're getting at from all these reviews, it was nothing to do with the whole way of people's lifting and manual. I mean, it goes back to that. It basically supports that Daniel Sower paper, which you can read in the show notes, about how it's nothing to do with how we're lifting in work or how we're moving in work. It's more to do with people's poor general health. And their psychological stresses. So if you're having poor quality of job, like if you hate your job, you're a bit of a mess in terms of your personal fitness. You know, you're basically say you're obese, you smoke, you hate your fucking job, you wake up every day thinking this is shit.
Yeah.
The chances are according to this paper, which has had a lot of data to go through, it links quite a lot to lower back pain, because if you have a little niggle and you're going through all this shit and you don't want to be there, it's very easy just to go, fuck this, I've got lower back pain, I'm off work.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been a good episode there. I hope people have enjoyed that. We've gone into some depth. I just want to finish up by we've spoke quite a lot about sort of progressively overloading and adapting to things. So there's something else you can adapt on, and that is caffeine. If you listen to our coffee episode before,
here
you go. Tom acutely dosed himself with caffeine and set himself into a situation where he could see sound. So you do need to progressively overload in caffeine. But what he did have was Cannibal Coffee. So all jokes aside, we've got a great coffee sort of partnership where if you head over to cannibalcoffee.co.uk and you use the code PRIMAL10, and that's 10 is numericals, you will receive 10% off your order, and we also get like a little something back, so it can sort of help us towards the running costs of the podcast. So at the moment, that's kind of the only way people can sort of support the podcast, if that's what you want to do. We're not that bothered really, but it's good coffee as well. It's really, I mean, I use it as pre-workout. Tom uses it to see sounds, but as we said, caffeine, once again, start light. If you do get some coffee from these guys and you get the maximum charge one, be careful of your dosing. Because if you acutely dose with that shit, it will get you buzzing.